Chapter 27. The Speech of Angels. Angels talk with each other just as men do in the world, and on various subjects, as on domestic matters, and on matters of the civil state, and of moral and spiritual life. Nor is there any difference, except that their talk is more intelligent than that of men, because it is more interiorly from thought. I have been permitted to associate with them frequently, and to talk with them as friend with friend, and sometimes as stranger with stranger. And as I was then in a state like theirs, I did not know otherwise than that I was talking with men on the earth. Angelic speech, equally with human speech, is distinguished into words. It is also by sound uttered and heard. For angels, like men, have mouth, tongue, and ears. They also have an atmosphere in which the sound of their speech is articulated, although it is a spiritual atmosphere adapted to angels who are spiritual. In their atmosphere, angels breathe and utter words by means of their breath, as do men in their atmosphere. In the entire heaven, all have one language, and from whatever society they come, whether near or remote, they all understand one another. Language there is not learned, but is implanted by nature with everyone, for it flows from their very affection and thought. The tones of their speech correspond to their affection, and the vocal articulations, which are words, correspond to the ideas of thought that spring from the affection. And because of this correspondence, the speech itself is spiritual, for it is affection sounding and thought speaking. Anyone who gives any thought to it can know that all thought is from affection, which pertains to love, and that the ideas of thought are the various forms into which the general affection is distributed. For no thought or idea is possible apart from affection, their soul and life being from it. This enables angels to know merely from another's speech what he is, from the tone what his affection is, and from the vocal articulations of sound or words what his mind is. The wiser angels know from a single series of words what the ruling affection is, for to that affection they chiefly attend. It is known that each individual has a variety of affections, one when in joy, another when in grief, another when in pity and compassion, and another when in sincerity and truth, another when in love and charity, another when in zeal or in rage, another when in simulation and deceit, another when in quest of honour and glory, and so on. But the ruling affection, or love, is in all of these. Therefore the wiser angels, because they perceive this, know from the speech the whole state of another. This has been granted me to know from much experience. I have heard angels disclosing the character of another's life merely from hearing him speak. They also said, from some of the ideas of another's thought, they could know all things of his life, because from these ideas they know his ruling love, in which are all things in their order. They know also that man's book of life is nothing else. Angelic language has nothing in common with human language except certain words that are the sounds of a specific affection. Yet this is true not of the words themselves, but of their sounds, on which subject something will be said in what follows. That angelic language has nothing in common with human languages is evident from the fact that angels are unable to utter a single word of human language. This was tried, but they could not do it, because they can utter nothing except what is in entire agreement with their affections. Whatever is not in agreement is repugnant to their very life, for life belongs to affection, and their speech is from that. I have been told that the first language of men on our earth was in agreement with angelic language, because they had it from heaven, and that the Hebrew language agrees with it in some respects. Because the speech of angels corresponds to their affection, which is of love, and the love of heaven is love to the Lord and love towards the neighbour, it is evident how choice and delightful their talk is. For it affects not only the ears, but also the interiors of the mind of those who hear it. There was a certain hard-hearted spirit with whom an angel was speaking. At length he was so much affected by what was said that he shed tears, saying that he had never wept before, but he could not help doing so, for it was love speaking. The speech of angels is likewise full of wisdom, because it proceeds from their interior thought, and their interior thought is wisdom, as their interior affection is love. In speech, their love and wisdom unite. Consequently, their speech is so full of wisdom that they can express in a single word what man cannot express in 1,000 words. Also, the ideas of their thought include such things as man cannot grasp, still less express. This is why the things that have been heard and seen in heaven are said to be ineffable, and such as ear hath never heard, nor eye seen. That this is true, I have also been permitted to learn by experience. At times I have entered into the state in which angels are, and in that state have talked with them, and I then understood everything. But when I was brought back into my former state, and thus into the natural thought proper to man, and wished to recall what I had heard, I could not. For there are thousands of things not on a level with the ideas of natural thought, and therefore only to be expressed by the variegations of heavenly light, and thus not at all by human words. The ideas of thoughts of the angels, from which their words are derived, are also modifications of the light of heaven, and the affections from which the tones of the words are derived are variations of the heat of heaven. This is because the light of heaven is divine truth or wisdom, and the heat of heaven is divine good or love. And the angels have their affections from the divine love, and their thought from the divine wisdom. Because the speech of angels proceeds directly from their affection, and the idea of their thought being, as was said above, the various forms into which their general affection is distributed, angels can therefore express in a moment what a man cannot express in half an hour. Also, they can set forth in a few words what has been expressed in writing on many pages. This too has been proved to me by much experience. Thus the angels' ideas of thought and the words of their speech make one, like efficient cause and effect. For what is in the ideas of thought as cause is presented in the words as effect. And this is why every word comprises in itself so many things. Also, all the particulars of angelic thought, and thus of angelic speech, appear, when presented to view, like a thin outflowing wave or atmosphere, in which are innumerable things in their order derived from angelic wisdom, and these enter another's thought and affect him. The ideas of thought of every one, both angel and man, are presented to view in the light of heaven whenever the Lord pleases. The angels of the Lord's celestial kingdom speak in a way resembling the speech of the angels of the Lord's spiritual kingdom, but it is from more interior thought. Celestial angels are in the good of love to the Lord, and therefore speak from wisdom, while spiritual angels are in the good of charity towards the neighbour, which in its essence is truth, and therefore speak from intelligence. For wisdom is from good, and intelligence is from truth. For this reason, the speech of celestial angels is like a gentle stream, soft and, as it were, continuous. But the speech of spiritual angels is slightly vibratory and divided. The speech of celestial angels has much of the tones of the vowels U and A, while the speech of spiritual angels has much of the tones of E and I. For the vowels stand for tone, and in the tone there is affection. The tone of the speech of angels corresponding to their affection, as has been said above, while the vocal articulations, which are words, correspond to the ideas of thought, which are derived from affection. As vowels are not essential to a language, but serve by means of tones to elevate the words to the various affections according to each one's state, so in the Hebrew language the vowels are not expressed and are variously pronounced. From this, a man's quality as to his affection and love is known to the angels. The speech of celestial angels is quite lacking in hard consonants, and it rarely passes from one consonant to another without the interposition of a word beginning with a vowel. This is why in the word the particle "and" is so often interposed, as can be confirmed by those who read the word in the Hebrew language, in which that word is soft, beginning and ending with a vowel. Again, in the word in Hebrew, it can in some measure be known from the words used whether they belong to the celestial class or the spiritual class. That is, whether they invoke good or truth. Those involving good partake largely of the sounds of U and O, and also somewhat of A, while those involving truth partake of the sounds of E and I. Because it is especially in tones that affections show themselves, so in human speech, when great subjects are discussed, such as heaven and God, those words are preferred that contain the vowels U and A. Musical tones also, whenever such themes are to be expressed, rise to the same fullness, but not when less exalted themes are considered. By such means, musical art is able to express affections of various kinds. In angelic speech, there is a kind of concord that cannot be described. This arises from the pouring forth and diffusion of the thoughts and affections from which speech flows, in accordance with the form of heaven, and all association and all communication in heaven is in accordance with that form. That angels are associated in accordance with the form of heaven, and that their thoughts and affections flow in accordance with it, may be seen above. Speech like that in the spiritual world is inherent in every man, but in his interior intellectual part. Yet man does not know this, because this speech does not, with man, as with angels, fall into words analogous to affection. Nevertheless, this is what causes man, when he enters the other life, to come into the same speech as spirits and angels, and thus to know how to speak without instruction. But more on this subject below. In heaven, as has been said above, all have one speech, but it is varied in this respect, that the speech of the wise is more interior and more full of variation of affections and ideas of thought, while the speech of the less wise is more exterior and lacking in such fullness, and the speech of the simple is still more exterior, consisting of words from which the meaning is to be gathered in the same way as when men are talking with one another. There is also speech by the face, terminating in something sonorous modified by ideas. Again, there is speech in which heavenly representatives are mingled with ideas and go forth from ideas to sight. There is also speech by gestures that correspond to affections and represent things like those expressed by their words. There is speech by means of the general things of affections and the general things of thoughts. There is speech like thunder, besides other kinds. The speech of evil and infernal spirits is likewise natural to them, because it is from affections, but from evil affections and consequently filthy ideas, to which angels are utterly averse. Thus the modes of speaking in hell are opposite to those of heaven. Consequently, evil spirits cannot endure angelic speech, nor can angels endure infernal speech. To the angels, infernal speech is like a bad odour striking the nostrils. The speech of hypocrites, who are such as are able to feign themselves angels of light, resembles as to words the speech of angels, but as to affections and consequent ideas of thought, it is the direct opposite. Consequently, when the inner nature of their speech is perceived, as it is by wise angels, it is heard as the gnashing of teeth and strikes with horror.